events, and issues shaping our community. This is Comcast Newsmakers.
Even though storm season is now underway, we should never forget there are other potential hazards in our area. Robert Molleda with the National Weather Service is here to tell us what else South Floridians should keep on their radar this summer. Thanks very much for joining us.
My pleasure.
One thing, storms, big thunderstorms. And South Florida is in a unique position where it actually is conducive to these major storms taking place, right?
Yeah, and in South Florida, especially during the summer months, we have a lot of hot, humid air, and that's really what we need to get thunderstorms going. It's that hot, humid air, the air rises, it forms in the clouds, and that's how we get thunderstorms. Then we have the sea breezes that push inland from both the Gulf and Atlantic coasts every afternoon.
And that's cool.
And that's cooler air coming in, replacing the hot, humid air over land, and when those air masses converge, that's where you get the storms to form.
And you don't see them coming, they actually form over South Florida.
Yes, many times they'll form literally right over the peninsula, and then they'll move right over an area in a very short period of time.
Which makes weather prognostications down here somewhat iffy, right?
It makes it difficult and also dangerous because you can get lightning out of these storms. You know, you can go from a clear sky to dark, menacing clouds and lightning really sometimes within half an hour.
Now, lightning is a big issue to watch out for down here. We're one of the leaders in the nation as far as lightning deaths.
Yeah, Florida leads the nation in a number of lightning strikes, and because of that, number of lightning deaths. If you take South Florida alone, we average 2 deaths every year just in South Florida, and an additional 9 injuries. So lightning
What
is an
can
issue
people
here.
do to protect themselves from that?
Well, it's really being aware of what's going on in the sky. If you're starting to notice the sky's getting dark or it's getting threatening, that means that the storm lightning could be, could strike at any moment. Also, once you hear thunder, that's really your cue to go inside. You don't want to wait until it gets too close because you never know when that strike's going to be right on you. In
previous years, we've had drought conditions down here, but this year is a little bit different from previous years.
Yeah, we had a pretty wet winter. Normally winters are a dry season here, but we had a pretty wet winter, so the water tables are fairly high right now. So we're going into the summer with a high water table. If anything, we need to maybe be a little bit concerned about the risk of some flooding due to our typical summer rains, on already wet ground. So, that's something we need to be aware of.
Now, flooding is another issue because I remember a storm maybe about 5-6 years past that came over. It wasn't even a named storm, it was a low pressure system that brought a great deal of flooding and a lot of problems for South Florida.
Yeah. Flooding, something that we have to deal with. Flooding in South Florida is rarely deadly, but it can be a pretty big problem, especially in areas that maybe have poor drainage or lower lying areas. Those areas you always have to be aware of. Any summer thunderstorm could produce flooding, and especially tropical systems, even if they're not strong from a wind perspective, they can dump a lot of rain and cause flooding.
Let's talk rip currents, because for people who are out there on the beaches, that's something that's potentially life-threatening. What are rip currents? How should people avoid them?
Yeah, rip currents are narrow channels of water that extend out away from the beach, through the waves and then back out towards the ocean. Sometimes they're maybe about 100 yards. They're very narrow channels, but they're narrow, fairly rapid-moving channels. And if you get caught in one of those, you're not going to be able to fight it. In other words, the current's going to take you out. It's going to be too strong for you to swim directly against it. What we always advise is, if you feel like you're being pulled out by this rip current, best advice is to either swim sideways to try to get out of that narrow channel, or just float, let the current take you out as far as it's going to take you, and then once you feel like you're no longer being pulled out, then swim back towards the beach.
Now, we talked about droughts, but along with the drought are the fires. And fires happen when it's a pretty dry condition, right?
Yeah, wildfires are common in Florida, especially during the real dry spring months, March, April, and May. This year, because of our wet winter, we didn't really have a big issue with fires, but fires are something we do have to be wary of, especially during those dry years.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Don't get left behind this hurricane season. Be completely prepared. Let Comcast On Demand be your 2010 storm guide. Just select Get Local. I'm Spiro Kent. Thanks for joining us.